I really thought about Jesus and his model, and I just think he was such a real, down-to-earth human being. Now, whether you're a Christian or whether you're not a Christian, you can agree that Jesus, non-Christians say he was a remarkable human being, but what made him so real? As a Christian, I think he's the king of all creation. We look outside now, and this is just a little bit of all that he created. He created us. He created the birds and the bees and the plants, and he created all of creation. And yet he came down, first of all, as a human being. That's already like a downgrade from king, God, deity to human being. Not only that, he didn't come down as a king on earth, he came as a carpenter. And he did that so that he could reach the people he was trying to reach. He was so real and down to earth. And again, you can't have a talk at a church and not use the Bible. And I really love this passage from Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 to 8. And it says this: in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being, I don't know why that was like that, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And so at this point, I want to ask you, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, guardians, whatever you are, I want to ask you, how far are you willing to go to reach the ones you love? How far are you willing to go to reach the ones you love? Jesus went as far as the cross. How far are you willing to go to reach the ones you love? See, just as Jesus came to us and he met us where we are, we need to go to teenagers and we need to meet them where they are. Stop waiting for teenagers to come to you. They will not. If you didn't know this yet, you're about to find out. They're stubborn. Absolutely stubborn. But we need to meet them where they are. And so when it comes to connecting with your teenagers, your number one tool is this. You got to keep it real. Your number one tool is keeping it real. Now, what do I mean by keeping it real? All right, first of all, you've got to be transparent. Okay? Share your flaws. Share your flaws. My most successful year at Crossroad was when I had a dorm of dudes. Obviously, I'm not going to have a dorm of girls, but my dorm, and the very first night, we were just chatting about particularly alcohol, and I shared with them a time that I maybe went a little bit too far, and I regretted it, but they knew that I worked in the church. They knew that I was a Christian, and they knew that I loved Jesus, and I explained to them that as much as it was a mistake, I regret it, and it shouldn't have happened, and it actually sucked being drunk, and the next day was even worse. But I can tell you this, the moment I shared that, those boys were so confident with coming to me about whatever they had. There were a lot of things that came out. And I've never had a more successful year at Crossroad. I just connected with them. But it's because they realized he's not perfect. We're so busy expecting each other to be perfect. And they realized when I shared my flaws that I'm not perfect. But it immediately makes you more approachable when you share your flaws. It makes you more approachable. Hey, my dad failed plenty of math tests. Hopefully he'll understand and perhaps show me how he dealt with it. Let them know that you've made these mistakes. They can come to you for advice. They can come to you to learn from you. You need to think about that. Sharing your flaws and sharing the things you've gone through will make you more approachable. My mom was bullied at school because of her appearance. That's what I'm going through. Maybe she can help me. My mom understands. We need to be thinking about that. Share your flaws. Be willing to share your flaws. Tell your kids about the mistakes you made. Tell them about the mistakes you made. But then tell them about the lesson that you learned from that mistake. Tell them about how you've been there and that you understand. Don't be scared to open up. Don't be scared. Obviously you want to be a bit cautious with what you share. You don't want to be stupid and share all sorts of things, but be willing to be vulnerable with your kids. They need to know that mom and dad are not perfect. Secondly, don't be afraid of making mistakes. I know that it takes a lot to admit when we're in the wrong. I mean, I don't even have kids yet, but it takes a lot to go to another human being and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, or I'm sorry, I was in the wrong. Be willing to go to your kids and say, I'm sorry, I think I handled this wrong. Because immediately they realize, hold on, mom and dad aren't perfect, but they know that. Mom and dad aren't perfect, but not only that, you create a culture of apologizing as well and accepting where you've gone wrong. You've got to set the example. That's what it comes down to, moms and dads. You've got to set the example. You've got to be willing to apologize. It takes a lot, I know. But in apologizing, it'll make a huge difference in how they see you. It'll show them that 1, you're not perfect. 2, you know you're not perfect. And 3, that you're honest. It'll show them that you're honest. We need to get over this whole thing of parents need to be perfect. I think kids expect their parents to be perfect because parents expect themselves to be perfect. We've got to get past this. You are not perfect. We are not perfect. We need to accept that we cannot be perfect for everyone. But we want our kids to look at us and say, sure, mom and dad can't save me. I can't idolize my mom and my dad because I know they're not perfect. And that's where you have the opportunity to show them how perfect Jesus was, and that's why they should look to him. Often I think kids can idolize their parents, and that's why they won't turn to Jesus. By apologizing and acknowledging your flaws, you will revolutionize your relationship with your kids. Apologizing and acknowledging your flaws will revolutionize your relationship with your kids. And in being real, you will find that saying no becomes a lot easier. There's an overflow. There's an overflow from the connecting with your kids and having a good connection, having a good relationship, and in being real with your kids, you build this sort of like this really solid relationship so that when you say no, you have a relationship where you don't fight about it, you discuss it. There's a mentorship that can happen. I have a good relationship with my mom and dad, and well, they're saying no. But why are they saying no? Now all of a sudden, instead of fighting with you, they're comfortable enough and they have the confidence to come to you and ask you why you've said no. It's a lot healthier, a lot healthier. They know that you've made mistakes and they can be sure that you're looking to protect them. They know that you're real and they know you're not the enemy because they're so used to this relationship where you've mentored them and you've cared for them and you've connected with them. They know that you're fun. And they know that you're not trying to spoil the fun. But they also know at the end of the day, you're not just their friend, you are their parent and you are looking out for them. I was chatting to Levon yesterday and she said it's very difficult to draw that line of parent and friend. You need to draw that line. If you don't, you're going to have big problems. Because they're going to tell you how it is in your own house, and I don't think you like that. You're not there to be their friend, you're there to be their parent. God hasn't called you to be their friend. He's called you to be their parent. Now, this isn't bulletproof. Being real with your kid isn't necessarily going to, every time you say no, it's going to go well. These are teenagers. They're sinners. You're all sinners. We're all sinners. It never goes according to plan. But I can promise you now, it will make it a lot easier to have a discussion about it. Even if they go off at you at first, they will come back and there will be an opportunity for you to explain why you've said no. Now, at this point, I would like to ask you to please learn to say no. Please, please, please learn to say no. I'm so tired of going to the shops and when a parent says no, there's a kid rolling on the floor. I look at that and I'm like, I'll put you in the freezer. It'll keep you still. I hate it, but it's because there's a bunch of entitled children running around. Whenever I ask mom and dad, they say yes. And if they don't, I'll throw a tantrum. They'll say yes anyway. Learn to say no and stick by it. Please, please, please. I'm tired of seeing girls dressed however they want to because mom and dad are too scared to say something. Now at this point, dads, please don't barge in. Please don't run at your daughter as she's about to leave the house. You just tackle her and where are you going? Don't do that. But mom, dad, what I would recommend is that husbands, you step back and you let moms deal with it. Go and speak to your daughters. Explain to her why she's worth so much and she shouldn't be dressing a certain way. Explain to her why the way she's dressed is not appropriate. And mentor her through that situation. And dads, you can tell your boys that it's okay if their pants aren't dragging on the floor. It really is okay. And finally, in being real, it makes sharing the gospel a lot easier. Why was Jesus able to share? Do you think if he was so high and mighty and this king who arrived on a stallion, do you think that the peasants and the tax collectors and the prostitutes, do you think they would have gone to him? No. Only the religious elite would be allowed around Jesus. If you show them that you too are not perfect and you too are a flawed human being, they will know, Mom and Dad understand I can't get it right all the time, but I can come to them. You are so much more approachable. Don't pretend to be perfect. Be willing to apologize. Of course, that's when you're in the wrong. Don't ever apologize when you're not in the wrong. It might be worth sitting your kid down and saying, I'm not going to apologize because you were in the wrong, but if there's a point before where you have apologized, you can then say, remember that time when I reacted this way and I told you I reacted in the wrong way? And I apologize, and I expect the same from you. But they will never look at you as this perfect human being. So when you come to them and you tell them about Jesus, you're not coming as this perfect, high and mighty person. You're coming as a person who accepts that they're broken, accepts that they are flawed, and are in need of the gospel. And that's why we're here today. That's why I wanted to have this whole thing. Yes, social media is important, and we really do need to educate our kids and our teenagers on social media. We do. But the point is connecting with them in such a way that it makes sharing the gospel and mentoring them in their relationship with Jesus a lot easier. That's the point of this. That is the point. I think of all the people that Jesus reached. He didn't reach the perfect people by society's standards. He reached prostitutes. He reached the tax collectors, the politicians of today. The people who we wouldn't necessarily want to reach with the gospel, Jesus reached them. You want to reach a teenager who knows that they're a mess and that their life's a mess and that everything's chaos? You want to reach them? Show them that you're broken. Be real. Be transparent. That's what they need. If there's one family who I feel has really gotten this whole connecting with their teenager down to a T, is Rob and Michelle. Kieran and I have been friends for many years, and I remember when we really became much closer friends at the age of about 16. Kieran stepped over at my house, and when they dropped Kieran off, he was leaving. He went and he gave his dad a kiss on the lips, and he said, "I love you, Dad." I was like, what? First of all, you kissed your dad on the lips. I don't do that. And my other mate, we don't do that. Then you told your dad that you love him. That's so weird. I mean, now you must imagine at this point, this is a family of dudes who gym. So you got one oak, cheers, love you, Dad. And you got Dad, cheers, love you, my boy. And you're like, what? The hardest guys in Joburg, and they're telling each other they love each other and they kiss each other, but that's the connection we're looking for. Herman, I look at Luca and how he interacts with you particularly. I mean, he's taller than you now, but he leans over you and you're like, he's hugging you. But it's the best thing to see that teenagers are comfortable to do that. Why? Because parents have taken the time to connect with them. Let me tell you, you guys have got the perfect relationships that have been cultivated for gospel ministry. And you need to use that. It's so awesome to see young teenage boys particularly still loving their parents and telling them in front of their friends, they don't care. It says something about the relationship that you've built. I promise you now, if that your boys are bullied at school, they'll come to you and they'll tell you. If you sit down and you say, what's going on? They'll tell you because you've built that relationship with them. You guys are a prime example of what relationships between parents and teenagers should look like. Wendy, with your girls as well, I can see it on a Sunday. I told you, Just the connection. It's so awesome to see. But you see, by following all the steps in the talks that we've looked at today, you've done a couple of things. You've cultivated a relationship that is ready and able for sharing the gospel. You've built a real connection with your teenagers. You've shown them that you are real. You've acknowledged that you're not perfect. But now, you need to begin to minister. You need to begin to minister. You see, as the youth worker here, I can tell you now that we slave away on a Friday night. And I know a lot of your kids don't come to youth, but we slave away on a Friday night. But if parents aren't ministering at home, our work is useless. We need you on our side. We need you on our side. I encourage you to bring your kids to youth. I encourage you to bring your kids to church. But I encourage you to also minister at home. Please don't leave it to me as the youth pastor, because you're the first youth pastor that has been called to that teenager's life before me. I'm kind of like the backup dude. You need to be ministering.